So good morning everybody and welcome back to another film. So I'm back on the coast where I ended last week's video when I got rained off, and I'll put a link to that video above if you haven't seen it. It's an absolutely stunning location this. I literally have got the whole, what would seem the whole coastline to myself this morning. There's not a soul to be seen anywhere, it's ridiculous. But the time now, to be fair, it's 7:45, so it's probably a little bit early for most people. I left home this morning at 4:30. It's not that far here, it's about an hour away for me to drive to. And I came back to try and finish off what I started last week. Was I always like looking for those details within the landscape, those smaller vignettes, and that's what I've come here to do this morning. Now when I arrived, it was flat, grey, overcast, and it was nice light for what I had in mind, but the forecast is to clear up, and I wasn't sure if that was going to happen, but as you can see, there's some nice breaks in the clouds around me. That lovely golden warm light is actually gone now, and we've got that more cooler lighting conditions. But as I was walking through the dunes, the light was really quite nice. It wasn't dawn light, but it was nice, warm, very, very sympathetic, complimentary light, and it really worked well for the colours in the dunes. Now this morning, for whatever reason, I put my wide angle lens in the bag, and I was able to use it. It was nice to do a landscape vista for a change. It's something I've not done for a little while, and it was really quite enjoyable. I enjoyed the whole process. I filmed it, but I didn't get a chance before that to do my opening piece to camera, so I'm doing that now. So what I'll do is I'll cast you back 20 minutes back into the dunes, and you can just see that image being taken, and I will see you in just a second. So one of the great things that I love about landscape photography is when you have to react really quickly and just jump on something the very second you see it, and often that includes a frantic search around for some foreground composition. Now I've got the camera set up already and I've already taken the image. I was basically just walking through the dunes and I was heading to the beach, and the light suddenly started to get really nice. So it was that quick dash around looking for some compositions that might work with the beautiful details in the sky that has suddenly started to appear. When I arrived here this morning, it was just a very, very grey day, and as I've got over near towards the sea, for whatever reason, it started to part. I think the weather forecast is for much more sunshine today, whereas overnight it's been quite cloudy. So my frantic search included looking for an area of pristine sand. Now as luck would have it, we've got quite a lot of wind that we've had overnight, and that has polished almost the landscape clean of any footprints that probably would have been here the day before. The areas that I've focused on particularly are these two clusters of marram grass here. It was all that I could find at the time, and to be quite honest, I'm really quite happy with how they've lined up with the cloudscape behind. Now, I don't often bring my wide angle lens with me because it's generally a lens that I use when I've got a planned location. I know I've got some really interesting foreground, and I know when the light's going to be good for that bigger vista that the wide angle lens encompasses in the distance. So I'm going to put this camera down quickly now and just talk you through the composition. I've taken the image because the sun came out and I wanted to get a range of photographs very, very quickly with the sun in and the sun out, so I could make that decision at processing which one I prefer. But a really nice composition which I'll talk you through now. So I'm not going to walk in amongst the composition to sort of show you exactly where things are placed, because for whatever reason the photographer in me just isn't comfortable walking on a pristine composition. It just doesn't feel right, so I'm going to describe it from here as best that I can. This first tussock here of marram grass is clearly the nearest point to the camera, and it's that forms the base of the photograph, the foreground interest. That then leads to the next one. Quite a simple composition really, and often the more simple the composition is, the more successful it is. A little bit of space between the two areas, I've left some separation. Now the camera's quite low down here, and the top of the second clump of marram grass is connecting with the marram grasses in the background, which are forming the stopper for the image. Now, some of you might argue that there should be some space between the top of that and the background grasses, and just show an area of sand in between to create that stepping stone through to the background. I considered that. Now, there is sort of a hillock off to the right hand side that I can climb up, but when I get up there and create that separation, I lose this foreground interest that I really want really nice and up close to the camera, and that gives the image impact. And that's basically, with wide angle lenses, that's how you create that lovely dramatic viewpoint, that wide angle start to your photograph. I get up there, it loses that, it just becomes more of a normal scene. So there's a bit of a compromise to be had in that regard. Like I say, it was a reactive photograph, it was something I just had to jump on, and I think in the grand scheme of things, I think I've done quite well with the composition that I've got. It's very much about the sky, this image, and the light. I had the sunshine that suddenly came out and glanced across the sand. The sky has got some lovely cloud details in it, and it was really quite dramatic. The shutter speed is just enough to give me a little bit of movement in the marram grasses. I didn't want to freeze it because the sky looks quite dramatic, like I say, and I think that movement in the grasses really just emphasises that and just takes away that stillness and really captures the feeling of the day. I'm going to put the camera, hopefully if I can get it high enough, just on the back of this camera now, and just go through the settings quickly, and now you'll actually see the composition before I put the photograph up. So there's the composition as just described. Just show you quickly, this is not necessarily the final frame. This is one of the images that I've taken, and it's not on live view. I've taken a good number of images, like I say, in different lighting conditions, and this is probably one of the flattest of the sequence. I wanted to sort of keep the one that I probably choose for the final viewing. But as you can see, like I say, you've got that nice bit of separation between these two clusters here, and it is just clipping the grasses off in the distance there. But this lovely foreground cluster here really makes for a nice anchor point. Now, this particular one is f14, 200 ISO and 1/10 of a second. I've taken some at 400 and I've also taken some at 100, and I've also on occasions used f16, like I said, to try and get the movement in those grasses to really give a feel and sense of place. The background line, it is a bit of a stopper, I suppose, but it does draw a line under the image at the end there, and just helps you to focus on that lovely dramatic moody sky that we've got going on this morning. So the lens that I've got on currently is a 28 to 45, and I'm set on the widest, which is 28mm, which on a full frame equivalent is roughly around about the 21mm range. I've also got a 0.6 neutral density graduated filter, just to add a bit more drama in the sky and to balance the exposure, because there was some portions of the sky that were really quite bright and I was just a little bit bothered about them burning out. I could have taken several images at different exposures and blend them, but there's the purist in me from the days of slide film, where I always try to get it right here on the day rather than spend too much time on the computer. So I'll put that image on now. think that image worked out really quite well, and I think it'll sit nicely in my group of 3 that I like to get when I'm out and about shooting for these videos. The wind this morning is really quite strong, but I'm not going to let that deter me. But when I was shooting out in the sand dunes a little earlier on, the bag every few minutes or so, I was just looked down, it was covered in sand. It's just really important to keep the top of the bag closed all the time, but changing lenses and things like that, I've been very, very careful. But it really is a very strong onshore wind, and just to prove that, I will turn this lapel microphone off and just let you hear how it's whistling through the little video camera at the moment. Pretty rough to say the least. I don't even know whether you can hear me now, but I'll put the microphone back on so you can hear me properly. Right, so I'm going to walk a little bit along the strand line and just see what catches my eye. I've seen stuff already, to be honest, and I'm just looking for something that just raises the benchmark that little bit higher. If I can't find anything, then I will go back to the bits and bobs that I've found down there. I've literally only walked, what, 100 yards from where I entered the beach. And you can see the yellow marker there, that's where I entered the beach, and just into the dunes about 30 yards is where I took that first image this morning. So let's have a look. The tide's definitely on its way out this morning, and I'm going to have to work between those periods of bright sunshine when the light is complimentary as we've got it right now. So let's get on and see what the eye can pick up. So I've been walking now for about 20 minutes since I last spoke to you. Put that tripod down, and the yellow marker that was off to my right before is just over there. I've walked about, I don't know, 200 or 300 yards, something like that, and I just thought I'd check in and just give you an idea of what I'm looking for. So ordinarily I'd search along the strand line for things that have been washed up. You often find that there's some nice compositions within that area along the coastline to photograph, but whatever reason today, there's not a lot of debris been washed up at all in the last tide, and the beach is really quite clean, pristine. In fact, it's really beautiful. But if you do look in the distance, you may be able to see that there are one or two little blobs of various things, such as rocks, clumps of sand, seaweed, shells, things like that. And it's those that I'm concentrating my efforts on. Sand patterns as well is another one. At the end of last video, I didn't quite nail the shot that I was really looking for. So everything like that is on the table today. And what I'm really looking for are clean compositions. So for example, if you've got some seaweed bladderwrack, for example, it's got to be a good example of bladderwrack. It's not got to be having bits falling off it. The shape in which it's been deposited on the beach needs to be complementary, and also the surrounding sand in which it's placed on, or landed on should I say, or settled on, needs to be nice and clean as well. So all these things make for a nice image in the end. You might have heard the phrase, and I'm not particularly keen on it, is the KISS phrase, which is keep it simple, stupid, and that really applies to these smaller scenes. Nothing has got to be out of place. Everything within the image has got to have a purpose. The minute you have something that's a distraction, and the image goes down in its value completely. So that's what I'm looking for. And like I say, I'll just keep walking until something grabs my eye, and I'll catch up with you then. Right, so the composition that I found is by no means unique to me. I've seen it done before by other photographers, but what I'm trying to attempt to do is put my own little spin on it. I'm going to turn the camera around now and show you the feature that I found and explain why I like it. So, as I say, not unique to me. You may have seen this type of shot done before. So it's these lines here that I like, and what's happened is that we've got a slight depression here, and you've got the water that's run down towards the sea as the tide's gone out, and as the water's made its way down into the channel, it's left these little lovely patterns in the sand, and they're almost like trees a line of trees or tree roots, but they make lovely shapes, and the light really picks them up nicely. So what I thought I would do to give my own spin on it is, rather than just photograph these, which to be fair I've seen much bigger versions of them, I'm going to incorporate this channel as well as a base, and that provides a contrast to these shapes here, so you've got different types of shapes contrasting with each other. The line also provides a nice base to the image, and what I do like about it as well is the fact that you've got this lovely clean area of sand above, which just finishes the composition off nicely and gives these fingers somewhere to run into just to finish the frame off at the top there. I'm not sure of the crop yet. I quite like the way this is looking on a 16:9, but I'm not 100% sure. But what I did do, and I'll show you, is that if you look at all the different tripod holes that I've got dotted about, and that's me trying to find the best spot possible to form the composition. I did hand hold at first, but I found that once it was on the tripod I could really concentrate on the position. The sun is still out quite bright, and at the moment it's casting some nice shadows, which is picking up the features of the lines, but I did wonder whether flat light would be better, but looking at that I'm not due any cloud for some time yet, so we'll just have to see how we get on. So we got the flat light, and I've taken a couple of images, one with the sunshine and one with the flat light. What I found was when the flat light came, as we've got now, the modelling within the little depressions in the sand wasn't anywhere near as pronounced, and I'm not sure it's quite as strong. So I've taken some in sunshine as well. Now I have a general rule of thumb with photographs in sunshine, and that is, if you look at your shadow on the ground, and typically with no sunshine now so I can't show you, your shadow on the ground needs to be longer than you are tall. Or for example, if you've got a tree and you're photographing the tree, the shadow of the tree needs to be longer than the tree is tall, and that way you can ensure that you get that nice modelling on the scene that you want. The minute the shadow becomes shorter, there's just no complementary shadows within the scene at all. You don't have that problem with the nice overcast soft lights, but certainly today, because I'm shooting directly down onto a pattern, the detail within the ridges is just not as pronounced as what it is when the sun is shining. Ideally, if the sun had been really low, we'd have got some lovely detail within those markings, but as it is, I'm quite pleased with what I've got. So the camera, as per usual, is just set directly over the top of the image, and I've got a 100mm macro lens. I'm not doing a stack at all on this occasion because I've got the camera lovely and flat. There's no undulations that are so high that I need to worry about depth of field. I'm on f16 and 100 ISO because nothing's blowing around, and it's a 15th of a second. So I'll put that shot on now. I hope you liked that last image. I just wanted to say that I think I need to get out of here again. There's a recurring theme, certainly seems to be developing at this location. The wind turbines that I could see at the head of the beach have disappeared, and I'd like to say that they disappeared into fog or sea mist, but I'm pretty sure that's heavy rain. Now last week when that happened, it was in for the day, so I bolted back to the van and called it a day. But I do know that the forecast today is for better conditions to come, and this isn't actually expected, so it's just one of those anomalies that you get on wide open landscapes like this. So I'm going to head into the dunes and find myself a nice steep section and just hunker down behind it and let this pass, but it looks like I'm going to get wet again nonetheless. So I'm back out on the beach. The rain actually didn't come anywhere near as bad as I'd feared. As I said earlier, it's an onshore wind, so it didn't actually come directly at me. It went off inland towards the east, and I just sort of got a little bit of a shower, but nothing really that I needed to be concerned about. So I've been walking up and down, and I've been looking at various things that have ended up on the beach, mostly seaweeds. There isn't a lot of it about, but I've looked at dozens and dozens of them, and I can't quite find one that I think really lends itself to a nice composition. The light, as you can probably see now, is really quite high in the sky, and those shadows that I was talking about really aren't complementary at all now. They're quite harsh. So ordinarily, if I'm in an inland site and there's no wind, I'd get my cloth out of my bag and I'd create some nice soft light over the top, but I can't really do that here. So it may be the case that I end up casting my own shadow over a subject when I eventually find something. That's not too bad in a place like this because there is so much light. The shadow that I cast on a subject won't be totally uncomplimentary, let's say, because the light that's bouncing around off the sand will fill in a lot of the uncomplimentary shadows, let's say, and will soften the whole thing up considerably. So I'm not too fussed if I have to use my own body to create some overcast lighting conditions, some subdued light over a subject when I eventually find something. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to head into the dunes, because as I've said, a lot of the bladderwrack that I've been looking at isn't that great, and when I have found one or two that's not too bad, it's drying out in the sun and it just looks a little bit untidy, let's say. So I'm going to head in and hopefully we'll find something on the way back through the dunes, and then call it a day at that last image. I am definitely going to get one more image, so fingers crossed. I'm not saying something I'm going to regret later. I will see you in a minute. Good grief, what a day. So I came into the sand dunes to escape the sunshine, and I've been in here about an hour, struggling a bit to find the compositions in this bright sun, and as luck would have it, the clouds have come back in that time, and I have found a little area that I've been exploring, and I found a composition. As you can see behind me, tripod's all set up, and all around this area you've got dead vegetation that's been exposed with the wind, and it's all based on where the wind's blowing on any particular day. You can come tomorrow and all that will be covered and you won't see it again. And what I was particularly drawn to is all around here there's lots of we see the fragments all around. These are snail shells, and there's lots of the shells that are actually intact, fully intact, and some are virtually hidden by the sand, some are sat on top of the sand. And I looked around, and I'll just show you an example. You can just see here there's just hundreds of them, and some are in cluttered places like that, and an example, some are a bit cleaner. They're literally all over the place. So I found a nice group of three, which I like the shaping of it, the diagonal, but the snails shells were overly colourful, and I had seen that there were some really nice colourful ones knocking around here and there. And searching paid dividends. I found a group of four where one of the certainly the biggest of the group is a nice pinky colour, but I took it about 10 minutes ago, and in the time I've been speaking to you, the composition has changed. It's beginning to cover up. It's just remarkable, really. But I'm going to quickly show you the group of four, and then I'll put the image on and tell you what lens I've got on as well. So as normal, it's a 100mm macro. The aperture I'm on is f13. There's the group of four there, which are more covered up now than they were. You can see there's some other ones just here, but I've excluded these and I've just concentrated on this four here. Hopefully four looks alright, but I think that pinky one there is quite strong, and I really like that. I also like the way that this one here is the other way around, so it creates a bit of extra contrast interest. in terms of contrasting shapes and the way that they're positioned. These three here look like they're going, yeah, they're going that way, sort of the way that the whorls curl around, but the other one is going the other way around. So it's quite interesting, and I really quite like it. In terms of camera settings, like I say, f1300mm macro. At the moment it's on 1/25th of a second. I'm underexposing by a stop because the sand's quite bright and I want to bring the exposure back to what it should be. It's a focus stack of two images. The largest of the 4 snail shells is quite high up in comparison to the sand, and because the lens is only something like 10 inches away from the subject, that depth of field is really reduced because of the magnification being greater. So it's a stack of 2, one for the top of the shell, one for the sand. So I'll put that image on now. Well, that's it from me, everybody. It's blowing a hoolie out here, so I'm going to head back. Images to come in just a second. So if you've enjoyed the video, as always, don't forget to subscribe. Leave some comments below, let me know what you think of today's images, and thank you all for joining me here again this morning. I will see you in the next one. So until then, bye for now.